have more fun skinning myself alive than watching this movie. Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. And in today's video I will be giving you my worst movies of 2023. I did do a massive 4-hour tier list ranking all 93 new release movies that I saw in 2023, but I decided to also just do separate videos of everything that came in at my worst tier and on my best tier for the year. So if you're not in the mood for a 4-hour massive ranking, you can tune in for this worst list, and then I will also be doing my best list as well. And I ended up with 12 movies in my absolute worst tier and 12 movies in my best tier. I have no idea how I just so happened to get the same number in both of those tiers, but I did. And I also wanted to do a separate video because I'm indecisive, and as I was putting everything in the tiers, I kind of changed my mind a bit for my best tier, because what I did was I just put everything in separate tiers, and then at the very end of that live stream I put my best of the year in order so that I could, you know, go from my best to my absolute best of the year and get my number one best of the year. But I'm feeling a little different about how I put my best of the year movies in order. And I also wanted to put my worst of the year in order so I could get my number one worst movie that I saw in 2023. So if you're interested in seeing what I had to say and how I ranked all 93 new release movies I saw, make sure you catch that. I will drop it in the description box and also link it at the end of this video. But for now, if you are interested in the 12 movies that were the worst of the year for me, we are going to get right into that here. Okay, so let's get right into my worst of the year. I will be starting from number 12 and then working my way up to the number one worst movie of 2023 for me. Coming in at number 12 is The Flash. Now, admittedly, I am not a very big fan of the comic book superhero genre. I literally only just started getting into trying to watch those movies like a few years ago. Outside of those original X-Men movies back in the day, it's just not my cup of tea. But I do get some type of enjoyment out of them, a few of them. And although I don't get the hype, I can still go in with the open mind and enjoy these movies. But when it comes to The Flash, I saw this in theaters. I did do a full video on The Flash if you would like to see my in-depth spoiler thoughts on it. And it was pretty lackluster for me. First of all, the humor was pretty awkward and weird. It didn't land for me. Then when we get to the actual character of the Flash, of the Barry character, we got these two different like timelines. So we got two Barry characters, and baby, one Barry was enough. The young Barry was like very immature and obnoxious and annoying, but the adult Barry was not much better. He still felt very youngish, kind of dim-witted and immature. And the movie also was not as much action as I thought it would be. And then when we get to the final showdown of the movie where we do get some action and just all the little points where we got a bit of action, it was fine. Honestly, it just felt like every superhero fight I've ever seen. Like, there was nothing special. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. It just was run of the mill. And also going into The Flash, and maybe I had the wrong expectations, I went in feeling like it would be more along the lines of like an action movie, but it felt more like a buddy comedy with the two Barry characters. And one thing I am learning with these comic book movies is they all tend to really play it safe. I felt like the story played it safe. The characters, they played it safe with the characters. None of these movies, and again, this could just be my expectation, nothing is ever very edgy, or everything feels very forgettable, on the nose, just playing it safe. I honestly can barely really remember a lot of the movie. Now, I did enjoy some cameos. I did enjoy getting into like the different people that would play Bruce Wayne once we get into different dimensions and stuff like that. So that was pretty interesting. And just the bulk of the movie, I was just sitting in the theater honestly bored. So yeah, not the worst of the year, but like not the number one absolute worst of the year, but yeah, and I really feel like honestly, if the lead character of Barry slash Flash wasn't so irksome, I might have enjoyed this slightly more. Like just a bit more than I actually did. Now, the next movie is Quicksand, which is just a low budget, generic movie about a couple that ends up on a hike in the woods and they get chased by someone and they end up stuck in quicksand. And the movie is pretty much us watching these characters stuck in this quicksand and trying to figure out how to get out. I did see this movie twice. It's one of those movies that is pretty bad, but I still got some kind of sick enjoyment out of it. But I mean, just you can kind of tell it's low budget, and low budget like in the worst way, because you can get some really great low budget movies, but low budget in the worst way. It really felt like throwaway like characters, mediocre, bad acting. Everything is pretty ridiculous. But honestly, it's not much I feel like you can expect from a movie like this. And the next movie coming in at number 10 is a movie called Disquiet. Now, the higher up we get, the worse the movies get. And Disquiet is not as, I feel like the higher we get in this list, the more boring the movies get. And Disquiet at least gave me things to work with, had things going on. Disquiet is a movie, a horror movie about a man who gets into a car accident and wakes up in a hospital. And the hospital is pretty much deserted. Only a few people are there. We cannot get out. There's no doors or windows. And this like supernatural stuff is happening and we're all getting killed off one by one. So it's mediocre. Again, it feels very low budget in the worst way. And I have no idea the budget of these movies, but it feels low budget. And we also get some pretty nonsensical and also unnecessary side plot with a cop and a black kid, which I thought was just so unnecessary. I was really irked that they threw that in the movie. I felt like it was just fine to just focus on the events in the hospital. I don't know why we had to add that, as well as the fact that outside of the main character, we don't really see a side story with anyone else outside the hospital. So I don't know why out of all the characters, the handful of characters that we are following in this hospital trying to fight their way out, why do we have to show a backstory and an outside story with the cop and the black kid? Like, that also felt unnecessary because we didn't do that with anyone else except the main character. And we get some like, you know, horror like put in here with monsters and certain scares, and it is honestly all pretty generic and mediocre, but it is entertaining enough way to kill time. Next, we have the movie Fear, which I have no idea why I was so excited for this movie. Maybe because I love Joseph Sikora and Power. But yeah, this movie, first of all, the thing that was odd with Fear is a movie where we have like a group of friends that go to this secluded cabin to get away from the pandemic and all of that stuff. And they end up getting killed off by like their fear and paranoia. First of all, the movie feels dated. It's very odd. Like, I feel like this was a movie that they filmed and everything 20 years ago and like just can't, I don't know why it feels so dated. It feels like one of those really generic movies from like the early 2000s, like One Missed Call or something like that. Also, the story just didn't make any sense. The decisions and choices of the characters didn't make any sense. Everything with this is just so nonsensical and ridiculous. And we have a group of friends that are supposed to be like lifelong friends since childhood, and it feels like an odd group of friends. There's no chemistry. They don't feel like a close-knit group. In particular, a certain character doesn't even feel like any of them would hang out with him. Like, it's just very odd mix. Very just, I don't even know why we made this movie. Next, we have the movie Don't Look Away. I did a full video on this if you want my spoiler-filled full thoughts. Don't Look Away was pretty much an experiment on how many tropes can we fit into one movie. Forgettable characters, the dialogue is atrocious, terrible transitions throughout the movie. Y'all, I will never forget. I think this was the most angry I was in the movie theater this year. I cannot ever forget sitting in that movie theater genuinely pissed off that I was in there watching this movie. Like, I was so mad. And I was actually really hyped. Don't Look Away is a movie about a killer mannequin. And I feel like there's two ways we could have approached this. We could have taken it very seriously and made this a very like sinister, like this mannequin is stalking and lurking in shadows. Or we could have went like the eight-legged freaks route and just made it more comedic. And I feel like maybe we should have took that route and made it more comedic, because they do take it seriously, but nothing works. It was so, the setup for the scares and the music, that like little ominous music they put in, like, so you go, y'all, it was so bad. It was so terrible. They would set things up, but it would drag. It was like so monotonous. I was just like, come on. If you're going to start setting up a scare, like set it up in such a way that we end up getting a payoff at the end of it, because we never got any payoff at all. All of the characters are ridiculous, forgettable. I feel like we are getting this trend of just the most terrible like main character. And I was also annoyed when we threw in the final girl's boyfriend, when it felt like we threw in just this contrived conflict to have. And especially when I felt like we can't go to nobody else's house. Her boyfriend is ridiculous. Why the hell we keep going to her house? Y'all, I really, really cannot describe how much I hated this movie. It was just, and I feel like I hated it so much because even though I went in blind and didn't see a trailer, just the synopsis, I had high hopes for this. So, and actually it kind of opens up a bit promising, like it would be an entertaining enough way to kill time despite some really stupid decisions made in that opening sequence. It still felt like, okay, we could get something redeemable here. But everything goes downhill. I don't know why the acting felt so bad. Next, we have All Fun and Games, which was pretty much just a cliche, generic horror movie with dumb characters. We have this kid. He finds this like haunted knife that ends up possessing whoever has it. And talk about the most painfully and unrealistic, oblivious characters throughout this movie. You have this kid talking weird, looking crazy, sweating like a whore in church, as they say, and nobody can tell it. Like, you may not look at him and say, oh, this little nigga possessed, but just to look at this kid, you know something is off. It was so weird, and everything kind of felt like they happen in contrived ways. Like, I have to, there's a moment when the character has to convince someone that the brother is possessed, and it's like hard for them to believe. But then I don't really have to convince you that we need some magic spell book to get, like, it just was, it's like when we want characters to not pay attention to something, they're just oblivious. When we want characters to not be easily convinced of something, we have to convince them. But then when we just want them to hop on board and not need convincing, then they just hop on board. It was just so ridiculous, y'all. This something else that was really annoying with All Fun and Games is there are moments where like blood looks fake, and y'all, this was just bad. Next, we have It's a Wonderful Knife, which is a horror, like a new like slasher that plays on the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And it starts promising enough with the opening sequence, but The story really made no sense. It was so nonsensical. It was also extremely predictable. We have this teenager that ends up wishing she was never born, and it's actually kind of ridiculous how the wish comes true, because the actual wish that comes true is not that she was never born, because she's here, she exists. If the actual wish came true, there would be no movie. She just wouldn't exist. But the actual wish that comes true is not that she was never born. It's just that she wasn't born of this town, like of this family. So she still exists, just not in her family. So I feel like that was kind of ridiculous. But also, the movie is predictable. We're in these two different like time dimensions. I called who the killer was in the original dimension, and I called the killer in the new dimension. It was so obvious, so easy to figure out who it was in both alternate universes. And as well as the story makes no sense. First of all, I felt like the main character, this teenage girl who ends up wishing she was never born, she kind of just comes to that conclusion. It kind of just makes no sense. Then we're supposed to go along this journey with her. She's supposed to like learn something and like, you know, and wishing herself not. But it felt like she wasn't the character that needed to learn something. Her parents were actually pretty terrible in her regular like universe with handling certain things after she was attacked and all this stuff. So I was like, why is she the one supposed to learn the lesson? So it just really didn't make any sense. It's like we just jumped to wherever the hell we wanted to jump to. Justin Long played a character in here. I think it was like the mayor or something. And his performance was very over the top. I really liked what he did. But honestly, it felt like Justin Long was in a different movie from everyone else. But I felt like he more so than the other actors understood the assignment. And I feel like we should have approached it more like Justin Long did instead of taking it so seriously. It did not freaking work. The kills were fine, nothing to write home about, nothing terrible, nothing great, but man, this one was and I've never seen A Wonderful Life, but I just feel like the story just did not make any sense at all. Next we have Youre Killing Me, which is a like horror thriller about this teenage girl and her best friend who goes to this high school party of this like obnoxious rich kid, and she's trying to, you know, smooth with him because she wants his dad or mom, I can't remember which one, to write some type of recommendation letter for this college she wants to go to. And she stumbles upon something she shouldn't, and the rich kid ends up kicking everyone out of his house and holding her and her friend hostage, and they spend the night trying to like make it out of his house alive. Mediocre ass acting, terrible characters, bad, like, y'all. One thing that really irks me the most, outside of the movie just being very boring, honestly, was we have this token black girl in the rich, obnoxious guy's crew. She annoyed the hell out of me. She felt like this attack dog that the rich kid trained. The lead girl, the final girl, she was a complete idiot. She made just constant terrible decisions throughout the movie. Like every step of the way, she made bad decisions. Honestly, everything and everyone here are just stupid. And I feel like we could have got something really fun and entertaining. We have these two girls locked in this mansion. You have this crazy, sinister, white, rich kid and his goons, his lackeys. Like, this could have really been like just a fun time, but instead, oh my God. And then we get what's supposed to be a twist that was so easy to see, and again just included the main girl making dumb ass choices. I feel like I want someone to like remake this in a better way, because I feel like, yeah, it's not the most inventive premise. We get a lot of, you know, trapped somewhere, fighting for your life, can't trust somebody scenarios, but I feel like this could have really worked if we had better execution. But yeah, what they gave us did not work. And it's always weird to me when I see actors I know and recognize and know can act and are talented play in something and the acting is bad. I'm like, what is going on here? Next, we have Pet Cemetery Bloodlines, which was supposed to be like a prequel in the Pet Cemetery franchise. It follows Judd when he's a young teenager. Y'all, my Jesus. The guy playing Judd was so boring and dull as hell. The narration was irksome. The whole story about Judd and his girlfriend wanted to like leave the town, I could care less about. It led to like the melodramatic arguments that Judd kept having with his dad that I could care less about. I didn't like us going back for this whole Jebediah Springfield backstory with the town and Pet Cemetery, and the third act was completely ridiculous. We have a moment where a character is telling us how we have to kill the things that come back to life from the Pet Cemetery, but then he goes to kill one and not in the way he said we have to, so then he gets killed. And like why didn't you follow your own instructions, sir? Everything about this movie is honestly very forgettable. It was all nonsensical. The story makes no sense. The characters, what they do makes no sense. Pam Grier was the most enjoyable, but I wish we did more with her character. And for me, the better movie would have been following Pam Grier and her group that are like tasked with the Pet Cemetery and protecting the town. That would have been more exciting than boring as dull Judd and his girlfriend and that whole mess. Next, we have Sound of Silence, which is one of the worst movies I have seen in my life. Talk about a bunch of nothing happening. Sound of Silence pretty much plays on the whole can't make a sound, along the lines of certain movies we have gotten recently. And it's just done in the worst way. And it centers on this haunted radio. And honestly, this, out of all the movies on this list, this is the one where I have the hardest time remembering specifics about the movie. We follow this girl and her husband who come back home to Italy because of something with her parents, like her dad died and mom was attacked, and it all centered on this haunted radio in the house, and the radio is haunted by like this family. A bunch of nothing happens. It is so drab. It is so boring. Bad acting. The lead is annoying as hell. And it has to be the most forgettable movie I watched this year because, like I said, I really cannot remember. I remember her getting home when the mom tries to warn her of something. Of course, she don't listen. The husband goes walking in dark to go to like a food truck to get food. Like nothing happens. The ghosts keep turning the radio on and off, and I'd rather watch paint dry. This was really terrible, and I'm sorry, I just don't have much more of a description because I literally can barely remember the movie. It's just a bunch of nothing, and then once we finally do get to the end, there's no payoff there. Like, there are those movies where it's kind of drab the first few acts, but then at least you get a payoff in the third act. It kind of ramps up, and at least that part is enjoyable. No, like, we got nothing here. We literally got nothing. The number 2 worst movie that I watched in 2023 was Till Death Do Us Part, which I went into thinking it would be like, a knockoff Ready or Not. We have this bride that absconds at the altar and the groom sends his groomsmen after her. And I thought it would be like a fun action fighting. Y'all, talk about bad freaking acting, and bad acting from folks I know can act. Drab, dull, boring dialogue. Oh my God, y'all, we have these, it's like a group of assassins, right? And 2 of them are going to get married. So now the groomsmen who are assassins are going after the bride who is an assassin. You would think we get some action, some fighting. Y'all, it was so much boring, drawn out dialogue. I mean, I wanted to stab myself through the ear canal. It was ridiculous. The story is nonsensical. Out of all the accents in the world, I don't know why, but I cannot understand the British accent. So I didn't understand nothing the groom was saying the whole movie. Which, that's not a knock to the movie. That's just me. I don't know why. It's something about that accent in particular I have such a hard time understanding. And his accent was so heavy. The movie, to sum it up, it's just lame and it's just dull. And then when we actually do get into the actual scarce like fights that we get, I really can't even hardly remember any of the fights, to tell you the truth. It was all kind of ridiculous how she manages to get out of, like, what was it, like 7 groomsmen that come after her? I don't know, 7, 8 groomsmen come after her. And then the groomsmen's dialogue with each other was very hokey and ridiculous. They had these really silly, like, names, like, you know, Slim Foot, or so, like, they were like called weird names that I was just like, yo, this is really stupid. Like, oh God, y'all, if I did not pay to rent this, I would have cut it off after like 10 minutes. And it just really didn't make any sense. And even like the whole timeline, I was so confused because it looks like it's really late at night. And when she calls her groom to say that she's leaving, he's like asleep. But then there's dialogue said that it's their wedding night. So I'm like, wait, I'm so confused on when the hell did she run away? But the one movie that took the cake for me, my number one worst movie experience this year, was Skinamarink. I can't even tell you a synopsis. I have no idea what this movie is supposed to be about. We pretty much are just looking at this like grainy video, and we spend the whole movie looking at curtains and crown molding and toys and the ceiling and like a kid like feet. I would have more fun skinning myself alive than watching this movie. I don't know what the hell the plot is. I don't know what the movie is about. I guess this is supposed to be artistic, and I'm just too much of a dumbed down audience to get it. The audio and visuals were really just irking me. Like, is this supposed to be some kind of ASMR horror? I have no idea. I would rather wake up a child and find my parents gone and no doors or windows in the house than have to watch this movie. I'm not one of those people who are going to just like or praise something because it's odd or it's different. There has to be something enjoyable, something entertaining, some type of entertaining factor. And I'm so sorry, but staring at grainy film, crown molding, and kids' feet is not entertaining to me. I have no idea what the hell the horror was supposed to be in this movie. There isn't even a story. I'm pretty sure there was no script. There was no beginning, middle, end, climax. And one thing that also irked me, I couldn't even understand what was being said. Y'all, a ton of people have been praising this, calling it the best horror of the year. So I guess it just flew over my head. I guess I'm just an idiot audience who just doesn't get the art of what this movie is trying to do. Thank you so much. Those were my 12 worst movies of 2023. And I will be coming out with my 12 best movies of 2023 after this one. And make sure you check out my full review of the movies I covered here. Pet Cemetery Bloodlines, as well as Don't Look Away and The Flash. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.